All right, then we will start off, Nanda. So hi, hello, and welcome to another episode of Join John series, where we'll be interacting with the host of industry speakers. I'm John Vincent, co-founder of NicheBrains and the host for this series. Just a quick brief about NicheBrains. NicheBrains is a business transformation platform which connects millions of SMEs with the best of brains across the globe to adopt digital transformation, to help them grow their business exponentially, thus democratizing digital transformation. In today's session, we have a wonderful guest, Mr. Nanda Kishore, a supply chain industry veteran with over 16 years of experience in this field and also an expert on the NicheBrains platform. Nanda has served in several small and large companies, from SMEs to world-renowned supply chain entities like the Safran, Zodiac Aerospace, Ansett Aircraft Spares, as well as stints in General Electric, UPS, American Express, and has honed his skills over the past few years with global working experience with C-suite leadership teams across the globe. He has also been involved in key business transformation projects that has optimized manufacturing footprint and service delivery across the world. So we welcome to today's episode, Mr. Nanda. Great to have you interact with us today. It will be great if you can also start with a brief introduction about yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, John. It's my pleasure and to get this opportunity. And just like you introduced me, I have been working in supply chain for more than 16 years. Worked at several different companies around the world. Had some stints in North America, Europe, South America, and Asia Pacific. So what I wanted to share with this audience today, I'm quite excited. Whatever we learned, I try to summarize it into short tidbits. So I'm looking forward to this session.
Wonderful, wonderful. So just getting to the topic for today, we hear globally, the top companies are going through supply chain challenges. So is supply chain really a dream or a nightmare to handle?
Okay, so let me definitely jump right in. Yeah. So what I wanted to show today, to this audience is, supply chain, it could be a dream or it could be a nightmare. So of course, there is a broad scope within supply chain. So I wanted to quickly point to our audience where they can keep track of 3 key areas. So of course, supply chain, you cannot fix it all in a day or a week or a month. But if we can walk our audience through some tidbits today, like for example, what you see in this graphic. So there are quite a lot of boulders, and that is so equivalent to our inventory. So there could be big or small inventory boulders that we don't know when the water is all the way up to the top level. Yeah. Which is our sales or our turnover, right?
Right.
But you can see this is a use case where we have seen companies are growing year over year. CY 2018 is good, 2019 is good. So there's going to be step up for more inventory. And suddenly COVID hit a lot of companies and they had a huge drop in 2020. Right. Even with a slight recovery on 2021, it's still going to be a huge challenge because you see that inventory keeps going up. Right. So my quick update on this one is you have to look at your inventory levels, not as an independent number or an entity at its face value, but you have to look at it as a percentage of your turnover. This is the key KPI. It's called inventory turns. Yeah. And how do we do that? Yeah, of course, we can have a nice finance team, and we also have a nice, awesome ERP system with all the integrated MRP engines trying to run you and tell you inventory turns by part number. Yeah. Or else, what other solutions are there? Because most of our audience might or might not have, that top-notch info or SAP, Oracle level ERPs. So what else could be the opportunity? So that is what I wanted to provide to this audience today. Another big one, if you are not having all of that, but at least quick exercise with your teams, just take a look at all your current inventory. And then I would like for you to arrange them into a pyramid, because not every item is the same. So the main takeaway is you have to have a broad base of the pyramid, which is going to be your raw materials, which are generally long lead time items. Once you have the raw material, the next of the processes are going to be pretty fast and pretty quick. And then you should be able to have very little amount of WIP or work in process. This is raw material that's probably cut into small pieces, and then you're waiting for the next step. So the WIP, it has to be a little bit narrower than the bottom of the pyramid. And finally, finished goods, which are products that are packed, ready to go to the customers, you should have as minimum as possible. So that is our key takeaway for this one. So we have seen again, time and time, some of the suppliers and our customers, they keep making WIP and finished goods just to keep their operations running. Maybe it's a temporary satisfaction, but in the long run, it's more trouble than what it's worth. So moving on to a little bit of quick brief on the second one, you also hear the big one in supply chain. One of the key terms is just in time. And now people are really questioning, if you look at the business news and articles, they're making this whole problem is going to be caused by just in time, right? But you have to take the supply chain as a chain of events. So in the past, it had happened that Japanese Toyota especially, idolize this just in time. But if you go to any Toyota plant, you not only see Toyota assembly plant, but the whole complex of all their entire network of key suppliers are all in the same factory arena. So in that case, just in time works. But if you look at a global, cost competitive countries, parts made in China that are going to be shipped out to Korea, eventually going to be transferred to a company in US for processing, and then coming to Europe, just in time, the product itself is not, to be taken at its simplest form, but you need to have some competencies. And again, this is how the ideal case safety inventory levels work in a just in time in a fashion. But you can see there are several different problems that are going to be happening over time. You will get some bad forecast to your suppliers. You will have some new product introduction. So you have to manage carefully the capacity of making the old product and the new product. Sometimes you are working based on some customer forecasting, and also suppliers, as we have seen, they will have some constraints, normal constraints as well as additional constraints during COVID, lockdown, shutdown, and other things. So that's something that you have to carefully look at. And eventually, you will come up to the final topic, which is supply chain analytics. This is what all the buzz is. It is one of the key digital transformation, pillars for most of the companies, to transform digitally the supply chain by implementing supply chain analytics. But if I can quickly take our audience through what exactly this supply chain analytics is, you have 4 broad categories of supply chain analytics. There are some tools that will just be a descriptive. So it'll only tell you what happened. So it'll kind of show you the inventory turns, inventory trends, and what is your return on the invested capital, which is your inventory. It doesn't do anything that it's just like backwards looking for reporting purposes. And then you have to dig deeper. So that will bring you to the next level, which is diagnostics. So it will help you to find out what did it happen, where did some of the shipment delays happen, why some of the poor inventory turns are happening, in which group of parts or which group of items, like that. And then moving up the chain, you have the predictive analytics. So this one, you will eventually be able to run some scenarios. If you have some trade regulation impacts, if there is a ban on importing from Ukraine and Russia, or if there is an effect of pandemic lockdowns or raw material pricing going up because of a strike in South America. So you can try to predict, who are all your suppliers that are affected by these, macroeconomic events. And last but not least, the highest level is the prescriptive. So these kind of supply chain analytics will also be able to help you what your team should be able to do. It will give you the best timing for new product launches. It will try to give you the best shipment strategy or network strategy, like that.
I was just about to, ask you that, if, we've talked about inventory, the just in time and supply chain analytics. So, probably you just pulled it up as well. That's what I wanted to ask. If you can give us a use case, of how this can be applied and, what benefits we can have, that'll really help the audience as well, Nanda.
Okay, so let me walk you through one use case. So this is a typical graphic, and I always like this one because it's worth 1,000 words, right?
Yeah.
So what you see is a tool that we have implemented at several of our suppliers and our customers areas. So you could also make this in Excel, but yeah, it probably will take the inventory and supply chain and finance teams, several weeks or working times. And then by the time they make it in Excel, it's probably already obsolete, right? Because the data keeps changing on a daily basis.
Right.
So this is the beauty of supply chain analytics. These are some simple cloud-based platforms. They are actually keeping track of your inventory, and it will kind of give you a sense of how your inventory is burning off.
Right.
If you look at, I started from March. So in the month of March, we probably had started this orange line, and everything is going okay through March and April and May. We are consuming the inventory. And at that point, you can see these dotted lines. That was supposed to be the projection, right? How, if things are going smoothly, where we would have ended up as of today, right? We would have been at this level. But something had happened. Instead of following the dotted orange line, the inventory started moving up, the solid orange line. And then by the time we came to end of June, as of today, we are even higher than where we started at the beginning of March. So this kind of, trends and graphics and visualization, and even now it's showing that there are some recommendations that the engine is providing to you. And if you follow and if you action on all of those, you'll be following that blue line. You can still burn down the inventory. But if you don't follow anything, then your inventory is only going to be going higher and higher, and you will peak by the month of August. And then slowly you will start burning down. But maybe who knows, so this is a typical use case. And by looking at this, you will be able to see that whoever is implemented this, taking the time, they are able to get these kind of benefits, by having this tool. So definitely what the tool is driving, it's kind of like an MRP engine as well as a recommendation engine on top. So it's trying to drive some improvements in the customer service and demand fulfillment. So 46% of all the teams that have been surveyed, they have provided that this is where they have gained the biggest one. Second one is, yeah, they also can react faster. In your case, we probably wouldn't have known that till July management review meetings and reporting that our inventory has been going up as opposed to going down against the trend.
Right.
But here, the tool will show you on a daily basis almost, that you can react faster. And then, of course, it kind of gives you a supply chain efficiency within the team, being able to do better work and so on. And eventually, it will be a greater integrator, because you can have this tool be made available to your suppliers so they can log in. They will not be able to see all the items, but they will only be able to see those particular items that are being provided by that supplier to this customer. So that is a quick use case, John, that I wanted to share with the audience today.
Right. So wonderful, Nanda. So just to summarize, Nanda, you talked about three key areas, right, for our audience to look into. Namely, one is the inventory turns, right, where companies cannot take the inventory just at face value, but they need to look at it as a % of the turnover. The second thing which you talked about is the just-in-time concept, which as a concept it is good, but it needs to be looked at as a whole ecosystem from our entire supply chain base. That's the second thing which you said. And the third one is about the supply chain analytics. So this is a new cloud source SaaS that any company can look into for a quick implementation. So normal ERP implementations take about 1 to 2 years time, but these take you about 1 to 2 months of short cycle with quick results. So Nanda, so based on this, I have a question. So now that we have something as simple as this is straightforward. Okay. So what could be the possible barriers that that businesses could face?
Definitely. Yeah. So you can see there will be a few barriers where the teams that we have seen are probably having some struggle. One is integrating data from multiple sources. Of course, if you have like multi-site, somebody is using different model, different formats. So these are all coming back to the master data management. And the second biggest problem is the teams are so relying on Excel that even if you provide them a nice, supply chain analytics and the visualization tool like this, they probably come to it with a pinch of doubt. So they are so relying on Excel that they do not trust anything else that is provided to them. And then finally, there are some data quality issues. Like, of course, the tool is only providing garbage in, garbage out. So even though the data inherently has been a problem, they are trying to put this towards the tool that, it's whether probably integrated or not. So they raise all kind of problems. And last but not the least, the cost is the fourth one. So as you can see that there are bigger hurdles to pass before the management team comes to having cost as a big obstacle, because these are the cloud-based platforms, and you could pretty much say that they are in a simpler term, they are on a monthly subscription model. And at this point, I just wanted to take that one of the other things also that we are seeing on the chat. One of the questions is, why do we call it a burn off rate? Is it the rate of consumption? So just to clarify on this topic, it's not necessarily the rate of consumption, but it's the rate of consumption added on top the rate of incoming goods from the purchase orders. So that is why it's called inventory burn off. So it's whatever you're consuming plus whatever you're getting on. So it's kind of like making a simulation, it's kind of like a simulated model of how your inventory will evolve over the next few months or so. So that is the big step on the barriers, John.
Right. So is there any key takeaways that we have for our supply, our SMEs to go and look back and try to implement Nanda, specifically with respect to the supply chain?
Definitely. So if we ask our teams, this audience, and if we ask them to, say how would they do something differently on Monday morning, right? Yeah. So if all the audience can go in there and if they can change their question, and if they can just find out that by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, when they're having the daily production meetings, yeah, if all those teams have the list of critical shortages and what are the main action items that they have to focus on for that day. So that is the main question that we have to ask ourselves, whenever we are going into this one. And then the second one is, if the teams are more comfortable working in Excel and the static data, that would be another one. Right. And the third one is, are the teams spending more time on creating the reports, filtering them, making some pivots, rather than actually working on addressing the action items, right? So if the main key takeaway, if you take this as a checklist, and if you mark at least one of them as yes, then definitely you need to look deeper into looking at some of these tools, and you need to be able to work through some of these elements of what are the benefits that you will get by implementing a system like this. Look at the just-in-time, look at what the system is recommending based on the supply chain engine, and so on and so forth. So that would be the key takeaway. It will not be like a big, huge book that you have to start reading. Right. But, if you check mark any of these as yes, then, there is definitely a use case for here.
Absolutely. I think it really makes sense, Nanda, from the takeaways perspective. I think this is what audience basically need to take back and probably try to look from their business. And if they probably have to implement one of these, then I'm sure they're going to see some serious benefits behind how the whole supply chain itself can be looked at. So thank you once again, Nanda, for sharing your insights with us today. So with that, we can open it up for any more audience questions as well. So I think you already had answered one question of Mr. Shekhar. So I think one more thing which is asked is, how do we set the control limits, right? Is that a full question, Mr. Shekhar? You answered all of that, Nanda, or just only part?
No, I only answered the first question that came up. So yeah, for the second question
is asked, can the model be simulated to determine the levels of inventory to match the designated confidence interval? And how do we set the control limits upper and lower? So that's a question Mr. Shekhar has again asked.
Very nice. Yeah, thank you. That's a very good question, Mr. Shekhar. So yeah, definitely the tool has two different lines that you can set up. One is a target. Potentially most of the times what we set up is, right now we are in the middle of the year. So let's set up a target. Where do we want to end up with by end of December? So the tool generally gives you a line. So if you go back to our screen, not only the inventory burn off, but you can also have a line that you have to have the inventory come to reach. And then there is also another one, which is called a stretch target. So, okay, maybe this is the line that we want to reach by this December, but maybe by next June, we want to have further lower levels, right? So all that you can set within the tool. And it is evident not only for myself who is setting up the tool, but it's evident to across the whole team members. So that kind of, drives the action towards, they can see the discipline, they can see the action items. As they are closing the action items, the tool is also majorly keeping track of their success rate. So that kind of gives them the momentum to keep working through. And so that is the answer for you. So we definitely have two control limits. Instead of upper and lower, it's kind of like, your regular target for this year, and then there is a stretch target for probably towards working towards the next step.
Right. So so does that answer, Mr. Shekhar?
Okay. Nanda, yes, it does. But typically, I am pleading the case of a small and medium enterprise, where they have less patience for models. I think the more fundamental question they ask is, on a daily basis, can I have 0 stockouts? Can I have 0 dead stocks? And what is the least exposure on inventories that I can take with regard to working capital? Just 3 questions. So in the sense, the reliance on Excel is because it is very here and now, but it is of course not workable because it is not dynamic enough. And I like your Gartner model, which is descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. I like it very much. So there are 4 stages of maybe maturity that you're taking the client through. So my question is, therefore, would you be able to highlight a case where on an operation level, which is on a daily basis, because most of the SMEs survive and die on a daily basis, can it be so operational?
Yeah. So certainly, sir, to answer that question, so let me just go back to that use case. It is definitely not a model. So this is actual. So it's changing every day. So if you look at this, the dotted line wouldn't have been there. I just had to click to see where I was. So it's kind of not a model, but it was just keeping track of the historical. So it was just giving you at the end of May, this is how we were projecting it to be. Whereas today, so it keeps changing every day. And also all of this is running based on your exact purchase orders. When is the date that the purchase orders are coming in? When is the date that your production orders are consuming the inventory, like that? So I wanted to clarify that it is not a model. It's actually a visualization of your true data. So instead of being in an Excel, it's kind of making it a graphical form. And also if you click at any of these points, it will give you a top 10 items list. What is the gap between that blue line and orange line? And it will actually give you the items that you have to work through. And it will also sort them by the sorting of priority. So if I do 2 actions, one is giving me a reduction of inventory by 100,000 rupees. Another one is giving me an inventory reduction by 10,000 rupees. So it's actually prioritizing the work for me and for my team. So that kind of makes the team more challenging, and it also has a lot of other accessories that you can have the suppliers be able to look at this data, how much inventory you have, how much consumption you have, and so on and so forth. So that is to give you the first question. And second question is, definitely this is something that we are trying to propose to the SMEs only. And it's not a simulated model that they will have to play around with. It's just like within a month's frame, you will have this available for you and your teams, and you can start working with it. So did that answer your question, Shekhar sir?
Yes, thank you very much. So the impression I'm walking away with is, if it is possible finally for this model to be adapted to a shop floor level, where I'm just likening it to a SPC or a statistical process control model, where an operator basically has a fundamental decision: should I interfere and do something, or should I step back and stay? Yeah,
that is it. Yes.
So if it does that, then I think it talks very well to your theme of, is it a dream chase or is it a nightmare? Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
So there's one other question from Subramaniam, Nanda. So does the tool be able to help us in giving consumption pattern month on month to be able to take decisions on buying raw materials?
Very good question. Very good question. Yeah. So this is a question that somebody like us in supply chain ask ourselves every day, right? So the tool has something that is called actions, inventory actions. So which is kind of showing you what you need to do on the purchase orders.
Right.
But there is also another level where it is going back and looking at your consumption, and it is saying that these purchase orders, you've been purchasing them 100 packs per month or 100 packs at a time, and it's suggesting you to make that as a 10 pack or a 6 pack, things like that. So there are definitely some inherent actions that are coming from the recommendation engine, and they will certainly be able to. So it doesn't have to be a one-time exercise when we start recalculating the costs or anything, but it's very dynamic. It's looking at the pattern, and as the pattern is changing, it's telling all the buyers, whoever is responsible, that hey, you have this purchase order, you need to break this into don't bring all 100 in one shot, bring them into 25 buckets of 4 months each. Or it's saying that, okay, you need to cancel this PO because it's too far out and you do not have demand for it. It's saying that, okay, your safety stock is here and it should be here, like that. Right. So all these tools combined, that's what is is addressing the question of how to address the inventory. So there is a plan for every part. So it's not like one plan for the whole company, but different part behaves differently. So that is how the tool has been able to do the lowering of inventory holding cost while still keeping up with the other constraint of not having stockouts.
Right. Wonderful. So
did that answer your question, Subramaniam?
Yeah. I think, yeah, I guess it's so. So there's a couple of other questions as well. He's asked, Subramaniam, is there any other means of lowering the inventory holding cost? So that's a question that he's asked, and other than JIT and stocking up.
So other than just in time and stocking up, yeah, one of the things that we always look at is how to work with the suppliers to reduce the lead time. So basically, like we went through the lead time model, right? So if we do not have to keep stock, because the reason why we have this such big stock on this part of the triangle is because this lead time is 20 days, right? So if you could imagine, if you are trying to reduce the lead time by working with the suppliers and by giving them some forecast, by giving them some kind of contractual buying volumes and things like that, then you don't have to have that, safety days of 15 days plus 20 days for lead time, but you can give them an overall forecast. And that is another one that I would suggest each and every one of the audience members to look at, because the demand itself is coming from the lead time. Basically, it is the lead time usage. So we all have to look at who is the shortest or slowest supplier, who is the longest lead time supplier, and that will become our critical path. So that would be one area that we highly recommend.
Right.
Yeah, Mr. Nanda, Subramaniam here.
Hi, Subramaniam.
Hello. Thank you very much for the insights which the product is capable of doing. Quite often or not, generally every business adapts of holding up the stock in a very minimal way. So other than like as you said, yes, no doubt bringing the lead time would reduce the holding up capacity of the warehouses and other things, but is there where small industries can pass the risk of holding inventory to their suppliers? Is there such kind of a mechanism? Because that would potentially help them in reducing the risks of inventory holding ups, and also they would be in a situation where they can use this inventory from the supplier directly, and which is managed by the supplier himself, because this is not actually taking place in small scale industries.
Right. Certainly, definitely what you're talking about is vendor managed inventory, right? So we can certainly work at a model like that. In the past, it used to be premium, purely for GEs and Rolls-Royce and Safran, who could only afford this kind of vendor managed inventory and support. But recently, there has been a bunch of newer companies that are basically providing that consignment stock. So what they are doing is you're transferring your risk to this company, they are keeping when you say 2 months stock or 3 months stock, that they are keeping sometimes at their location, and sometimes they are keeping it at your location, but it will be in a caged, separated area. And then when you are purchasing the inventory or using them, that is when you will create a different kind of purchase order, and you will bill them against for the amount that you have consumed. So there are several different models, Subramaniam said, that we would highly recommend for you to take a look at. All of this, you have to take a fine approach of total cost of ownership, because for sure, of course, these companies are not doing it for charity. What they would do is they would add a little bit of margin on the unit cost itself, but it will help you relieve quite a lot of unnecessary or indirect cost on your level. So on one side, you are paying a little higher for the direct material cost, but on the other side, you are able to save the time of purchase orders placement, following them up, receiving them inventory wise, and then going back and forth, and in case there is any shortage. So I would highly recommend. There are a couple of models that we have implemented recently in India also. And these are definitely not big suppliers. These are definitely smaller and medium tier suppliers also. And if you look at consumables like cutting tools, gloves and safety, other things, there are some companies who are implementing vending machines. So basically they are coming in once every week, they are filling up all the tools according to what you think, and then you have a thumb drive and you could use them according to when you use. And then when they come back and do the stock check only next week, then they are actually billing you for those items. So please look at those available options for you. And if you want, I can also point you in the right direction if you give me some more detail as to what kind of products that you are looking at. So certainly, definitely we have to turn every corner to be able to keep the inventory holding costs at the lower end.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Sure.
Thank you.
Anybody has any other questions?
Yeah. Hi, Nanda Lakshmi here. Thanks a lot for a very insightful session. I have a couple of questions, but to start with, I believe I would categorize the challenges faced by any business in any domain as pre-COVID and post-COVID. So from the supply chain point of view, Nanda,
Right.
after seeing the problems that is faced in the supply chain, is it the same challenges pre-COVID and post-COVID, but the size is huge, or are there new categories of problem you're seeing as a trend? This can, based on your experience, if you could share some insights on that, it'll be really helpful, Ananda.
Definitely. So once you go into supply chain, every day is hell, right? That's what they say. So in the past, Lakshmi, that used to be called back office. Some folks like me, they take offense because it is the backbone, right? It's not a back office where you're just simply pushing in the purchase orders and so on. So the problems have always been there. They have been similar pre-COVID versus post-COVID, but COVID has really exaggerated or magnified these problems. And with the business news, talking about it, it has become such a big visibility, for the supply chain troubles, because most of them started affecting people, maybe because it was more on the B2B, but now the supply chain problems started affecting the real end consumer, B2C. And that is when we started thinking about like truck driver shortage, people not able to get their items replenished on the store shelves, and how is that ending up affecting the common man, right? Before also, yeah, you would have some production shortages, you will not be able to work based on the production plan that you have frozen 1 month ago. But yeah, COVID has really put a highlight. And one of the other things is, one is COVID, which is impact at the beginning of 2020, but slowly the last 5 years has seen more and more of like globalization, where lead times are definitely creeping up longer and longer because everything is coming from a different country, in a cost competitive country in most cases. And the container shortages have come into play, the truck drivers, and same thing with when the passenger cargoes were not being able to handle the volume, then the air freight shortages have come in, and there are a couple of bankruptcies on the sea liners. So even the sea freight has becoming a premium to be able to get a slot for your container. So that is kind of like before and after COVID, but also there is an underlying slow current that has been eroding the supply chain and the supply base problems, Lakshmi. That's how I would put it.
Great. Thanks a lot, Nanda. Now I'd like
No
to
problem.
shift the question to a little bit different. I think you are on both sides. You manage the supply chain of one of the largest aerospace client, and then also at the most toughest of the time, you chose to become on your own like a freelance consultant. And
Right.
my question is basically, there are so many aspiring executives like you, choose the path of becoming a freelance experts. So I would like to know what were your advice to them when they are choosing the path of the freelance experts, what they should be focusing on? Is there any do's and don'ts which you can share? That would also be helpful to many of the experts who are joining on board with in niche brains, not just in niche brains, but also when they are wanting to be on their own, do an independent practice as well. Love to hear more about it as well, Nanda.
Oh, that's a great question, Lakshmi. So yeah, definitely, working in a big company, you have that umbrella and safety cushion and so on. But giving up that one and then becoming a freelance consultant will dictate how you want to live, and work at your own pace, right? So it has been a very good journey. I definitely would recommend everyone to give it a try. And the worst case scenario, if you don't like it after a couple of years, you can always go back to the 9 to 5 or working for a company. But there is a lot of pleasure that by doing and making your own trends, and by trying to bring in some of these new age tools. I'm not saying it's a huge SAP implementation or anything like that, but just by taking something that has been tried and proven and try to make it available to more and more SMEs, because the manufacturing is what creates jobs in India or any other place, right? And one of the things that we are kind of falling behind is to be able to take advantage of some of these tools that are available, because our team members in India always have that labor is cheap, right? But COVID has given that, okay, even if you have some cheap labor, sometimes they will not be able to come to work and then be able to make those products. And in some cases, even some of these guys were really struggling to understand, what does my purchasing team do? One day they are not in the office and I'm struggling, right? So these are some of the jobs that will become more and more visible only when they don't work. It's kind of similar to IT. You never think about the IT guy when your computer is working fine, but the moment you don't have the Zoom video, you will be calling and yelling for him. So in that aspect, there is a lot of opportunity. There is definitely long ways for us to go. There are a few bigger companies that are implementing the top-notch, off-the-shelf products, but there are quite a lot of SMEs that Niche Brains and myself, we focus on. And that is where the base of the pyramid, that is where the jobs and the products are being created. And that is where we wanted to be, be at least giving them some ideas, whether they like it or not, that these are some of the new age techniques and tactics. Does it answer your question, Lakshmi?
That's fantastic, and more than I'm sure that many of us can take a leaf out of your answer and then implement it on our own practice as well. And I really appreciate your thoughtful answer on this.
Very good. John, do you have time for a couple more questions that are coming up in the
just
chat?
thinking, because we are already past the time. So anyway, we pick up one more question. Okay. So there's one question from Shekhar. So is the demand for supply chain analytics triggered by a mandate from buyers or out of an urge to be operationally efficient by vendors? How do you evangelize the cost for supply chain analytics?
Oh, very good. So one of the evangelization has always been the push from our finance team, because if you look at any company, as long as they are broadly organized, the biggest teams that are working are in the production or manufacturing, or what you call as direct, right? The labor content that goes into the products itself. So they're called the direct labor. And right off of them, the indirect, the first one that comes into is supply chain. Right. So you always are walking around with the bullseye on your back saying, like, you have 150 people, you have 200 people, they are all indirect. So how can you efficiently run your team without having that many people, keep pushing in the POs and following up? So one of the big push for any supply chain team members to look at a holistic approach is, one is the systems implementation. So of course, you implement ERP where EDI and POs are going back and forth instead of faxes and emails. So that kind of takes out the big work or chunk of the workday. And then the next step is what these buyers are doing on a daily basis. And then the next step that comes into is the supply chain analytics. So I am definitely a big evangelizer for these tools that are handily available. And they were able to give us a big, huge boost up. And even if you have the full team members that are working in the office, still these tools will definitely help them, by focus point, not at the end of the month where you're looking backwards at your results and reports, but every day, the information is there, the prioritization is done, and then you successfully are able to drive the team members to doing bigger and better things. That is my biggest takeaway from this.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks a lot again, and I'm sure there are some more questions as well. So that probably, if there is any specific that you would like, questions that you would like to be answered, please do reach out to us in email. So once again, thanks a lot for all your inputs, Nanda. So I think there's quite a lot of takeaways for the audience, and it was quite insightful. So if anyone would like to get connected with Nanda for a one-on-one session, please reach out to us at support@nichebrains.ai, or you can email to me as well, john.vincent@nichebrains.ai. So thank you, Nanda, once again for being with us today on this episode.
Thank you, John. I really had pleasure. It's a very thought-provoking session, with the questions that are coming from you as well as from the audience. So I learned a lot personally. So thanks for that, and I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, then. Yeah, thank you so much, Nanda. Thanks everyone once again for being with us today. It was wonderful to have you, and hope to see you all in the next episode of Join John soon. So bye for now, and this is John signing off. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.